Hey everybody, what's up? Let's hold the truth hostage with a brand new episode of BACKER'S Backpack. Haven't done an episode in feels like over a year. Now I paid for the Rippaverse book, Isom 1, and as you could see, this is the package it came in. I'm not gonna do the whole unboxing thing, but I will say this package looks like it was printed by Greco Printing. I don't really think that the Rippaverse Isom one was all packaged by hand. I think he ordered some proof copies from potentially Greco Printing or some alternative printing company, and then he had all the orders made by this company, because I don't really think, from looking at this package, that it was all packaged by hand. I think Eric July basically ordered some proof copies, probably a good 20 or so proof copies, and some copies to sign by hand. Then he delivered the books where he didn't need to put out his signature on, with probably Greco Printing, some type of order fulfillment website. Because I've seen this type of packaging before for some other books I've ordered, or from be it Kickstarter. So I think he basically made the orders on Greco Printing. Now, I'm not gonna be doing the whole unboxing. I'm not gonna rip it open. I'm not going to allow you the pleasure of seeing my hands open this box and unbox the book. Now, I'm gonna give you a review after I read the book. So I'm gonna basically read it and tell you my thoughts. Let us see. Let us read this book. So, as you can see, man, I have the issue of the book. I'm about to open the book. I'm about to read it. I'm about to read the book and see what it's all about, And I'm reading it right now, so we'll see, man. We'll see what this book is all about. Isom issue 1. We'll see. The problem I noticed from opening the book is that I see that Eric July is the writer. I see the artist. I see the homie Gabe. I talked to him a little on YouTube. Solid dude. But the problem that's missing is, where is the editor? Does not look like there's an editor for this book. That might be problematic. We'll see. Let me start reading. I just want to highlight the message statement. It's a very nice message statement by Eric July. Very nice message. And, I like that. Very complimentary to the people that are reading. I truly believe that, we gotta be the solution, not the example of complaining and crying and moaning about an industry. I mean, we live in America, man. The greatest thing about America is that competitive, capitalistic drive. Americans are not known for crying and whining about something not being of quality. Americans are known for solving the issues when there is a lack of quality by bringing something new and refreshing to the market. I mean, that's literally how the comic book industry started anyway. It went from little bite-sized newspaper comics to an entire adventure you could read at the palm of your hand. So, I appreciate this message. Much respect to Eric July. Well, people, I've just finished reading Isom 1. I just finished reading it. Well. Let's take a look at it. I just finished reading Isom 1, and I'm going to give you a review. And From what I read, it might have lived up to what I was thinking it would, or it might have not. But I will say this, shout out to Eric July. I mean, he's opened the door. I mean, with Isom raising, over $3.5 million, a comic book, his first comic book, it broke the door open. I mean, it has broken the door open for, I would say, complete indie individuals, people that have had no experience in the industry. Now let's get to the review, but one more thing before I get there. Now, I look at Isom, the book, as basically, the Superman of this generation. The Superman of the new creators to come. It's the first blueprint for the new creators that are coming. Now look at the era of before Isom and after. And what I mean by that is before Eric July released, actually before the Rippaverse and after. Before the Rippaverse, indies were not thought to make that much money. You know what I'm saying? You had to basically have former experience in the industry to make it, and none of them really went full mainstream. Now, you do have Zach's book. I'm struggling to remember the name of the book. What was Zach's book? Give me a minute. I forget the name, but it'll pop up on the screen. Now, you had Zach's book, which is, I think he calls it Comics Matter. Your boy Zach had a book. And, it made over $500,000, but it wasn't mainstream where it was covered on the, all over TV and so on. So Isom, to me, the Rippaverse was extremely successful in paving the way for a new prosperity for the industry, because in my honest opinion, man, we're in the age of, content creation. It's not the 90s or early 2000s where all we had to consume was what was on television, or if it was on the internet, it was really, for example, us reading ripped comics or manga. We're in the age of content creation, and the mainstream comic industry, your DC, your Marvel comics, what I'm saying, they've completely fallen out with the public. They've completely fallen out when it comes to the younger generation, accepting it, because not only of the quality, but the lack of participating with content creators, And I look at the Rippaverse as basically Superman 1. Superman 1 was the first comic book from the industry, and it started the whole movement of superheroes from an industrial level. Eventually Marvel came, all these other comic book companies came. And I look at the launch of Eric July's Isom is basically the beginning of the non-corporate comic books, taking shape and going mainstream, because in him raising over $3.5 million, it has basically changed the talking points from, if you're an independent comic book creator, you'll only be competing with other indies and you'll never really affect the mainstream comics, But with the Rippaverse mainstream level of success, mainstream level of success to where it's probably the most successful comic book, or graphic novel of the whole 20 year 2022. It beats out every mainstream comic book ever coming out based on the sales, over 50,000 sold. And by the time it's done, because I think he's shipped a few to some comic book stores as well. So, this will be felt, the impact of this book will be felt for quite some time. And I think a lot of future indie creators with no experience in the industry will be popping up, But let's get to the review. Now, when reviewing this book, when reviewing the Rippaverse book, my thoughts for when when I bought the book, the goal was that it had to just be decent. It had to be decent. It didn't have to be a super spectacular, amazingly well written. It had to be decent, kind of like the first issue of Superman. If you read the very first issue of Superman, it was very basic, very decent. That's all it needed to be. So with the Rippaverse book going in, I wasn't expecting it to be a master class in writing and all that stuff. No, I was expecting it to be very decent. Now let's get to the rating process. Now let's start off with the art. The art to me was, the art was well done. It was well done. Some of the background, you could tell some of the background art wasn't as detailed as the character art, but the art in the book was well done. Even better than some mainstream books by Marvel and DC. So it was well done. The artwork was well done. Well done and of quality. So the art, I don't really have a problem with it. The art is more than good enough in the book. Now let's get to the character designs. Now, when it comes to the main character, I think, and it'll probably pop up on the video while you're watching it. When it comes to the main character, to me, he went too basic. When it comes to the clothing of the character, it just looks too basic. When you read the book, he's working in a farmland. He's a farmer or whatever, a rancher. But if you look at his clothing, he's wearing basically like a hoodie or something. It doesn't scream, I work in a ranch. He should have been wearing boots or something that told you, look, man, he lives in a farm and this is what he does. But it didn't scream that. It just screamed very generic character. That's a, a hoodie, some basic clothing. It screamed very generic with his clothing design, And that was a problem. Even the first introduction of the character, and most likely you'll see the introduction on the image below, that, the introduction of the character, you don't get a clear image of his face. And to me, I look at it as a wasted page. They should have shown different panels, maybe his face, on one panel, then the full body. They didn't show enough of him, so and some of the characters, to me, when you're looking at him, the main character, I just think he could have gone a little more distinctive with the character's clothing choice and design. Because, he's a rancher. If he's a rancher, he'd most likely be wearing some boots, maybe like a belt buckle, bigger belt or something like that, some work clothes, So that way when he came into the city, he looked out of place. If you read the story, it's suggesting that he left the town for quite some while. But if you look at the way he walked into town, it doesn't look like he's adjusted to his farm life. So to me, I'd say with the design of the character, it wasn't, you don't really see the character's personality in their clothing. Now, let's get to the major, issue, the major, point at hand. The major point at hand was the writing. The writing, I must say something. The writing in this book, the biggest trouble I saw, as you'll see from earlier, is that there was no editor. There was no editor credited in the book, and you could tell there was no editor. Shout out to somebody collab with Preston Poulter, who's runs Pocket Jacks Comics. You know what I'm saying? And he runs a stream writing. A writers helping series. He does this writers program for writers to help you write. Now, when it comes to the story of this book, man, it was, I would say this, man, it was, it was basically, it was very, let me get to it. Let's go. When it comes to the story and the writing and the pacing, this book suffered from a lot of dead pages. What do I mean by dead pages? There's a lot of pages in this book where it was just wasting. It was wasting the page. Nothing was happening. There's a lot of sequences in this book. I'd say when you read this book, there's probably over 20 pages where they were just wasting the page. They're wasting the panels. A lot of that, they were wasting it. There's a lot of dead pages where nothing happens, and that has nothing to do with the story. So let's get to the main story. So, of course, everyone saw when Eric July launched this book. When he launched it, he said, okay, a friend's, some girl is in trouble. And, the main character, Isom, gets a call from his sister to come check it out. But the problem with this book is that the issue he was called in for, there was no reason. You know what I'm saying? There was no reason for it. Basically, I'm not spoiling it or nothing. I'm not gonna say too much. But maybe this is in fact, this might be a spoiler alert, but it's not a complete spoiler. But basically, as the book, what happens is this, man, in reading this book, it from what I've seen while reading it, the trouble comes in that, okay, Avery was called in, Isom. He's called in by his sister because she thinks this girl went missing. So, okay, he comes to the aid of this girl. He comes to confront an old friend of his. And, his old friend basically, and in my honest opinion, in reading the story, there's a lot of parts where you could tell Eric July really needed an editor. He really needed an editor to read the script and the toning and the pacing. Because what happens is, Isom goes to the bar to confront the owner, which is an old friend of his, about the missing girl. And, he tells him, yo, man, it's none of his business. She's an adult, none of his business. And while talking to him, there's a major part in the script, in the pages where, while talking to the main bad guy, whatever, the bad guy starts lecturing him about his life. He grew up with 2 parents, but he didn't amount to nothing. One big problem with this script is that there's a lot of telling you what's going on. There's a lot of telling and not enough showing. There's not enough showing. There's too much telling. Like, for example, you'll read a page where Isom will say, you know what, I have to go help, this missing girl because her mom would be upset. I used to see her mom at the church, and instead of having an illustration showing that lady at the church and beside him when he was younger, is just the character telling you what happened. There's a lot of telling in this book, a lot of telling, too much telling and not enough showing. You know, that's what really harms this script. And you know, I've watched a lot of other people's reviews on the book, watched a lot of other people's reviews on Isom, and you know, a lot of them, to me, man, they might lack the critical thinking skills to explain what's going on, you know. But there's a lot of talking, you know. In fact, I might have to move it up. There's probably over 30 pages in this 90-page book that were basically a waste of time, a waste of space. For example, the character Isom, when he goes into the city, and another thing is there's a lot of repeating what we already know or have been told in this story. There's a lot of repetition in the story. So he leaves the ranch and he tells the ranch owner, "Yo, take care of it, blah blah blah. Take care of the ranch." So Isom's in the city, whatever. Something happens to him. Then we go back to probably 2 to 4 pages where we go back to the ranch, and we're just looking at a rancher going about his daily life, you know, and reminding us what the character already told him, to take care of the ranch. And it's a waste of pages, you know. It's a waste of pages. You know, my apologies for that. It's a waste of pages when you're watching that, when you're reading it. You know what I'm saying? There's a waste of pages where the rancher just says, "Hey man, we're selling stuff in the ranch. Thank you for buying stuff in the ranch." It's a waste of pages. You know what I'm saying? It's a waste. Now, let's get to the story. So what happens is the Isom character, and here's the thing about this story, man. This story has a very, you know what I'm saying? It has a very false domestic abuse case to it, a false domestic abuse case. Because basically the Isom character eventually meets the girl that went missing. He eventually meets the girl that went missing, and you think while writing the script, Eric July would have maybe some bruises on her face, maybe some bruises, maybe some injuries to showcase that, you know, she's not all right. Or maybe he finds her at home in tears, or she's hurt or something. You don't see none of that. You don't see none of that, man. What really happens when you read this script is it looks like a false, it looks like you're reading a Me Too post on Instagram where some girl said, you know, "My husband beat me." You know what I'm saying? "My husband beat me." And then you see the girl and there's no bruises on her face, nothing. Because Isom catches up with this girl and there's nothing wrong with her. She just seems uncomfortable. And it appears that the whole book, it appears that the whole book is trying to make something out of nothing. Because when he goes to encounter this female character, there's no bruises on her face. It looks like she's just an adult. She's basically with a bad man. It's kind of like, you know, a girl with a bad boy. She's with a bad boy, and families and friends are worried about her, but she's an adult. She's dating a bad boy. And when Isom catches up to her, there's nothing wrong. She just brushes him off and walks away. There's no injury, doesn't look at her. There's no injuries on her face. There's nothing to suggest that she's been harmed or in trouble. You know what I'm saying? This whole story of this girl missing kind of becomes like a false allegation or something for attention. You know what I'm saying? Something for attention rather than something serious. Because, Isom gets a call from his sister, Altona, that, this girl is missing. I'm worried about her. And when he goes to see her, nothing's wrong with her. Nothing's wrong with her. And then, and when you see that while reading the script, you get completely removed. Let me check something quick. You get completely removed from any level of urgency. Because, he sees her and there's nothing wrong with her. She just seems like she's living her life. Maybe she's made some bad choices, but no injuries, nothing. And the other thing is, as the story goes, man, the story, the story doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense is that he's looking for this girl, and the first thing he does is he goes into the club to talk to the guy she's working with instead of, and we've all seen movies and read a lot of comics. Why didn't, he doesn't go to her house to look for some clues. If a girl went missing and you can't tell the cops or whatever, you would go to her house to see if there's any sign of, physical harm or domestic abuse or violence, whatever. But you don't see nothing. You don't see nothing at all. Instead, he doesn't go to her house to see if there's any sign of injury or if she was kidnapped from her home or if there's any clues. He just goes to the club to confront the guy that was accused of hurting her. You see, a lot of this book, when you read it, and I know Eric July said, this isn't propaganda or any agenda behind it, but to me, if you read this book after being in the Me Too world we live in, after being in the Me Too world, this book, man, the story is really about a false accusation. It's a false accusation, man. You know what I'm saying? His sister calls him worried about a girl when there's no physical evidence she's been harmed or anything. It's just she quit a job, that she claimed she wanted. She claimed she wanted and she quit the job. And she tells her brother, and even that doesn't make sense. Her brother left the city. And if her brother was really committed, for example, Isom or Avery, if he's so committed to living outside of the city, he would only come back if what's really the issue that's going on is serious, as in there's evidence, there's proof. So even with the way Eric July wrote it, it wasn't urgent enough. It wasn't urgent enough for him to leave his life as a rancher. It would have made more sense if his sister said, we found her body, she's dead, and and maybe she comes to his ranch crying in tears and with her daughter or whatever, in tears, and they hold on to Avery or Isom, and Isom regrets not going to check up on her. And then you have a funeral scene where he has regrets, kind of like the Peter Parker moment with Uncle Ben getting shot. You know what I'm saying? If Isom had some regrets, then he does some investigations on how she died. You know what I'm saying? But instead, it's just his sister calls him, and it's kind of like she calls him like her girlfriend, like, I haven't seen my girlfriend in a while. She didn't take the job. I need you to check up on her. When he has no interest in this girl. That's not his ex-girlfriend. There's actually no reason for him to go out and save her. There's no reason for him to go out and save her. And, that's what this series suffers from. This series really, the first issue of Isom suffers from a lot of lack of direction. And he really Eric July really needed a editor. He seriously needed an editor for this book, because while you're reading it, man, the tension isn't there, the reasons aren't there. There's a lot going on in the book where you're like, you know what, I'm not attached to any of the reasons this is going on. And now, as we go further now, let's go further now. Eventually, you know, while going to the club where he meets the Fantano guy who's the big bad guy who's falsely accused of abusing this girl. You know, he goes to his bar, and one of the problems with the script is that the script does a lot of, you know, we'll talk, then we fight. You know, when you read this book, you're going to see a lot of moments where he has to talk before the fight happens. There's no fighting without talking first. There's a lot of, you could tell Eric July is very, very raw with his writing. Very raw, and in all honesty, signs that he needed an editor. He really needed a editor with experience, because in this book, while you're reading it, there's a lot of talk, then fight. Talk, then fight. Talk, then fight. Versus, you know, there's going to be a scene, you're going to read it, where he just kicks a door open into a bar and he talks to the people before fighting them. You know, he just blah, 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 blah. I'm here, you know, you blah, blah, blah. If you don't want to get hurt, then they fight him. You know, if you kick into the door of some people that are intoxicated, you know, in alcohol, drunk, they would fight you, man. There ain't gonna be no talking. You just kicked into the VIP section, we gonna whoop your ass. There's not gonna be no talking. So, you know, a lot of this book suffers from talk, then fight. And another thing is, and you could tell that Eric July is very raw with his, you know, he's inexperienced with his writing, is that the character tells us a lot of what we're seeing. Like, there's a scene where Isom comes out of the hospital and he tells you things he shouldn't be telling you. You know, it starts off with, okay, I'm out in the streets, bunch of weirdos, basically a bunch of homeless people in the streets. And, you know, he says, you know what, they won't suspect anything. Then a couple panels later, he reiterates that by saying they won't even suspect me changing my clothes or nothing. And even those people, he bumps into a woman that looks like, she works the streets, and she doesn't even ask him any questions. You need any directions, or where you going, honey? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of sequences in the writing of this book where, you know, Eric July is writing from a perspective of, he's not aware of what's going on in that real world situation in the book, you know. So now let's go further now. And even the fight scenes, you know, like I said, the fights, there's a lot of talking before fighting. And another problem this book suffers from is the characters' voices. You know, the characters' voices will just change, where now he fights this big, super strong goon. He fights his goon. When he first meets this goon, the goon doesn't talk. Big black guy doesn't talk, just fights him and throws him out the bar. You know what I'm saying? Then the next time they fight again, the big goon is talking like he's a philosopher. Where it accepts, they put us all in one place. And again, it's talk. Then once we're done talking, we fight. You know, so there's a lot of moments where certain characters, even a Fantano character, when you meet him, he doesn't talk as though, you know, he's his own character. Like, his voice comes out like he's Avery's father or disappointed father, instead of, we grew up, we went to high school together. You know, they don't even talk like they're formal, like drinking, sharing a drink, they have a relationship together. Instead, it's just, yo, man, why you here? You grew up with two parents and you ain't become nothing. You know what I'm saying? And another problem that this script suffers from is, the dialogue. The dialogue where, where certain characters don't sound or use words that would make sense for their age. Like you got older characters, you got an old man in one panel that's saying, dude, and he doesn't look like a hippie or he's smoking weed or nothing. He just looks like a professional man, and he's using words. There's certain words the characters are using that don't fit them, don't fit their age group or ethnicity, where they were raised. You know what I'm saying? Even the Fantano character, he goes from speaking like a businessman to then dropping a few hood terms here and there, some street terminology. He bounces between how he should be talking and how he is talking. There's a lot of loss and translation when it comes to the dialogue and the characters, And now, give me a minute. Yeah. So now let's get into, the big characters that were promoted. So you got the Yara character, and one of the big problems with this character in this book that's very problematic, again, it's the writing. The writing introduction of the character really hurts. I know Eric July watches wrestling, but you get the introduction of Yara with the Alpha Corp. You get the introduction of both of these characters. Now, the problem with the Yara character is she's introduced and she's not in uniform. She's not wearing her costume or nothing. And these characters are saying, so she meets the Alpha Corp and they say, we told you to not come here. You know what I'm saying? And she's just dressed in street clothes instead of her costume. And then the other problem you have is she's just there. And one problem Eric July did with the Yara character introduction is that, with everything going on with this woke culture, you know what I'm saying, the introduction to the Yara character shouldn't have been she's fighting, and here's the weird thing. She helps out the police and then the police attack her. There's a lot of moments in this book where it's as though the characters aren't aware of what's going on or what just happened. So he introduces the Yara character and she helps out the police. Then the police aim a gun at her and fight her. And with the woke culture going on, it just doesn't look right where you have a white woman, fighting the cops. It's just like the white female liberals saying, hey, defund the police. So that section, to me, it shouldn't have been like that. And the other problem that hurts the Alpha Core is that, so Yara's introduced and she one-shots one of the Alpha Core. It just makes the Alpha Core's appearance look weak. And then they don't really fight her. You don't see them really going after her or having real conflict with her. She's just there to fill up some space in the book. You know what I'm saying? There's really no reason for her to be there. You know what I'm saying? And the cop says we're going to get the Alpha Core. And to me, what Eric July missed on this section is he could have had the Alpha Core, he could have had the Alpha Core take out the criminals. Then Yara appears, Yara appears and maybe she attacks one of the Alpha Core females, and or maybe they're jumping her or something. They're jumping her and fighting her. She's running around the city trying to avoid them. So there's conflict between her and the Alpha Core. Instead, you get conflict with Yara and the cops, and she just one-shots one of the Alpha Core, who this story tells you they're one of the top reasons that crime has been eradicated, but you have the Yara character just, one-shot one of them, you know what I'm saying? And then they appear in the pose, they appear in a pose, you see them and so on, but they don't even say anything, you know what I'm saying? They don't say that it's their mission to stop her. They just said, we told you not to come back to this town. There's a lot of missing reasons to care about what's going on in this script. A lot of missing reasons, you know what I'm saying? So you see Yara pop up, and it's her fighting the Alpha Core, and she one-shots one of them. And then the thing that happens is off panel. Now, Avery, who's Isom, whatever, he was fighting a dude at the bar. And this part to me was very problematic, is that, okay, the guy tosses Avery out of the bar and looks like he tossed him across town. And this is another sign that, Eric July, while writing the script, wasn't writing it from a perspective of what's going on, any awareness. So what happens is Isom gets tossed out of the bar, and turns out Yara was tossed by, I'm assuming to be the Alpha Core, and they both bump into each other. And when they both bump into each other, instead of Yara asking, Isom, are you okay? And then the Alpha Core comes to fight them, you just have her fight Isom for no reason. And then it looks like the Alpha Core is just missing. If she one-shotted one of them, it would have been more personal. They would have wanted to either exterminate Yara or want to arrest her. Instead, she got tossed by them and bumps into Isom, and they fight for no reason. Instead of Isom saying, are you okay? He wakes up like, are you all right? What's your name? And she could have been like, my name is Yara, and then the Alpha Core attacks them both, and you have them fighting the Alpha Core. Then maybe Yara creates a distraction to have them both escape. And, when you read the book, you see that Isom, and I say this, he's very inspired by the first Superman book, because in the first Superman book, Superman could not fly. So when you read this book, Isom can't fly. You know what I'm saying? He can't fly. So instead of having him and Yara team up to fight the Alpha Core, and then they have to leave because they're outnumbered. They're outnumbered. The Alpha Core is 3 against 2. And the Alpha Core is, from reading this book, are the elite crime fighters. You know what I'm saying? You don't have that. You just have Avery bumps into Yara, and then you have Yara basically one-shot Isom. You know what I'm saying? And we read all these books, you have this whole anti-woke message where the male character is usually just overpowered and beaten by the female character like it's nothing. And you see this happen in this book where Yara just grabs Isom or Avery by the neck, flies him towards the sky, then just tosses him to the ground like he's nothing. And to me, what this does is it hurts the Yara character. Because, by the way Eric July was advertising her, she would be more wholesome, more caring. And instead, if you look at the Yara character in this book, she's just a heartless, you see her introduction is she's just a heartless, violent first female character, which, Marvel and DC have been pushing a lot, where a lot of their female, if you look at the book, Yara seems like a better looking, better sexualized, Captain Marvel. How Captain Marvel would just hurt somebody, attack somebody first instead of caring like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? How can I help you? So when you read the book, the introduction to Yara is she's just a heartless woman. Its introduction is she's heartless, and when you read her, you leave out with, I don't care for this character. I don't care for her, the character. You know what I'm saying? Because she's introduced as just a loose cannon, and then you just have her just one shot Avery after one shotting one of the Alpha Core. You know what I'm saying? And it just makes Avery look, Isom look like he's been feminized. You know what I'm saying? How badly he's easily beaten. You know what I'm saying? Easily beaten by her. And then she just disappears. And, towards the end of the book, you see her in costume, smiling, but that image of her smiling doesn't make sense when you were introduced to her in the book, and she's just a violent woman. Just a violent Captain Marvel XS character. She's introduced by just fighting people, especially Avery, who who they both crash into each other. It was the perfect setup for Eric July to set up that she crashed, Isom crashes into her, and then they team up to fight the Alpha Core. And the other problem is you don't even see cameras. Another thing with this book is it's written as though it takes place, like I'd say, when it comes to the background, as though it's the 1930s, as in there's no cameras. Like, you see Isom fighting, if you read when they introduce Yara is fighting the Alpha Core. Fighting the Alpha Core, and there's no cameras, no news people, no introduction of camera people filming them, or it's being broadcast through the city that they're fighting the Alpha Core, who's supposedly the most well-known, lowered the crime rate of the city, and you have no cameras on what's going on. There's a lot of lacking of self-awareness in the way this story was written. A lot of lacking of self-awareness of what's going on, in the story while you read it. And then now let's head towards the end. Towards the end of the book, man, it just only gets messier. A lot more pages are wasted. There's too many pages where the Isom character or Avery is just talking blah, 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 or just wasting panels, Like, for example, he got his ass whooped. He got his ass whooped in the bar. And, if he's a hothead, instead of him being a hothead rushing in to fight everybody, he just sits in a car for probably 2 pages. It's a waste of page count. And then he comes into the bar, kicks into the bar, and he just blah, 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 talks after talking, and then fights after telling you what's going on. There's a lot that happens in this book where it's a waste of pages. And to me, Eric July's pacing was horrific. The pacing was very horrific in this book, where I'd say he wasted probably, I think it's a 90-page book, you know what I'm saying? I think he wasted about a good 40 to about 60 pages are wasted on this book, where the pacing doesn't make sense. For example, after whooping the ass of the people at the bar and the main villain, and this is a very popular bar. There's no cameraman. Nobody pulls out a camera or cell phone to go live on social media to show what's going on. And the other problem is that you have this character showing up. He's not even hiding himself. He's not hiding his identity or nothing. and he's just going around fighting them with his face all out. You know, there's no stealth. He's just exposing. It's as though reading. It's like you're watching. You know, it's while reading a book. It was as though you're watching Superman try to save the day as Clark Kent, and no one realizes that Clark Kent is Superman, while Clark Kent is going around the town beating people, fighting super strong people, and they still don't realize that's Clark Kent, you know. And then when the book ends, when it heads towards the end, it doesn't end with a conclusion. It just ends with a forced section where he goes to get his costume back. And while going to get his costume back, you know, Eric July wastes probably 4 or 5 pages, you know, maybe 4 to 2 pages of him just going to get his costume back. And the guy tells him, welcome. There's a lot of talking for no reason. There's a lot of moments while reading this where you're like, you know what? Eric July didn't have a editor, and he just had to fill up pages, because there's a lot of, you know, in the words of Charlie Brown, womp 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 womp. There's a lot of womp womp pages where nothing happens. Just to pick up his costume, you waste. And here's the thing: the guys, when you get to this point, you know, he feels that his sister's in danger. His niece is in danger, and just to get his costume, you waste a good 5 pages, you know. And I know Eric July watched John Wick, you know, and he gets his costume in a suitcase. If Eric July would have just had that Isom gets his costume that was buried in the backyard, you know, maybe buried in the backyard, it would have made you as a reader be like, oh man, he buried his costume, man. He really doesn't want to go back as Isom. He doesn't want to go back as a hero. He buried his own costume. Instead, he goes pick up his costume from a tailor, and it takes over 5 pages. You know, it takes an excessive amount of pages just for him to pick up his costume. You know what I'm saying? Just for him to pick up his costume. Then he wears the costume and just smiles, and it ends. You're like, then the Isom aspect is done. You know, he doesn't do anything when he's worried about his sister's life. There's a lot of issues with the pacing and the character's awareness of what's going on. There's a lot of issues with that in this book. A lot of issues. And then you have the Fantano character, who's a big bad boss of a club, just talk for no reason about other competition when Isom just trashed his bar. His priority should have been sending mad goons after Isom to kill him or take him out. Instead, he's just talking about some other garbage going on. So there's a lot of the structure of this book. There's a lot of issues with the structure, the pacing. There's a lot of issues with it, you know. A lot of issues with it, and pacing when you read it. And another problem you have is in the book, Eric July premieres, I think he premieres this Viking-like character that I guess is his interpretation of a Thor. You know, he premieres the character, and they're doing a concert. They're performing a concert, and instead of Eric July having these characters perform the concert at the same bar where Isom was fighting, he has them perform the concert at a completely other different bar. So they perform, you know, when the introduction of these characters was wasted, and there was no point to it, because they perform completely away from the scenario. It should have been they perform at the same club that Isom is basically looking to settle the score. So, you know, while he's fighting these people, maybe they came to help Isom, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they came to help him while performing, you know what I'm saying? Or they did something. Instead, he has them perform at a completely different bar, you know, and then shows them flying around or their powers, talking about the realm, but it has nothing to do with the story. You know what I'm saying? It just seems like something that happened, you know? And then Eric July will, you know, the book ends with somewhat of a cliffhanger, but the cliffhanger doesn't connect, or, you know, it isn't urgent to what was going on when you were reading the book, you know? So the problem with this book is there's the pacing. There's a huge issue with the pacing. And to me, I'll say this, man, when Eric July makes his next book, Isom too, he's really gonna need a editor. He's gonna need an editor and a co-writer. Because when you read this book, and I'll be honest with you, there was probably a couple pages I just skipped. Like, I skipped the page with the ranchers just saying, oh, we got to work more. It was a waste. It didn't do nothing with the plot. You just had some ranchers, blah, womp, womp, womp. Then he returns to the ranchers for no reason. You womp, womp, womp. And, you know, and then I had to skip past Isom getting his costume back from a tailor. There was a lot of pointless talking. You know, about the material, the material the suit is made of. It was pointless. It should have been Isom gets back his suit. You know what I'm saying? Gets back his suit and from his backyard in the ranch. Because you know, he kept going back to the ranch. So why wouldn't you have Isom return to the ranch to get his costume? He kept foreshadowing the ranch that there's some importance, and nothing happens. Nothing happens with the ranch. You know what I mean? Nothing happens with the ranch at all. You know, so to me, man, with this book, with this Isom book, when you read it, you know, there's a lot of issues with the pacing, the structure of the script, the beginning, middle, and end. I mean, the way this book was written, it seems like it was written with the middle and just keeping it in the middle. You know what I'm saying? With some minor aspects of a beginning. It just the way it reads, it's as though you're reading a middle that never ends. You know what I'm saying? He goes to find out this girl been missing, goes to the bar, fights them, beats up the bad guy, then goes to get his costume to return to the bar. It's just an endless middle. You know what I'm saying? This book has a middle, you know what I'm saying? And it has a minor beginning. Then it just basically stretches out the middle with no conclusion. You know, you read the book, there's no conclusion, and a lot happens where, like I said, you know, in a world like this, in an age with cell phones, cameras, you know, the Alpha Core is just one-shotted. You know what I mean? They're supposed to be the top characters. They're so important to the world, and they stop the crime, and I think you only see them in probably 2 to 3 pages, you know, facing Yara after she one-shots one of them. You know what I mean? So those characters have been weakened, you know, weaken the Alpha Core, where they become pointless. You know what I'm saying? If Yara could one-shot one of them and then they just throw her across the street and disappear. You know, they're supposed to try to lock her up. So to me, man, with this book, when it comes to the story, I will say the story was, you know, the story to me, man, it's not there. You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, it's really a false accusation case. And then another problem with this book when you read it is that, for example, the way Eric July was promoting the book, he was promoting it as being a non-woke book with non-propaganda, and, I guess more family-orientated, story-orientated, more of a balanced family. But when you meet his sister and you meet her daughter, there's a lot of issues where it points back to the left narrative. You know what I'm saying? The issue, his sister has had a divorce, and, she keeps the child, and, you see the father's not there. Like, for example, there's a scene where Isom runs back into their house, and then, instead of being greeted at the door with the husband, maybe the husband's holding a bat, like, who are you? Then sees Isom, maybe gives him a hug or something. He comes to the house to realize that, yeah, man, his sister has had a divorce and basically is a single mother. You know what I'm saying? A single mom raising her daughter. So there's some negative stereotypes going on in there. You know what I'm saying? With the single mom thing. She's a single mom, and then she says, yeah, we had a divorce or whatever, but my daughter's handling it right. So basically it's kind of promoting that there's no damage to the child during a divorce. You know what I'm saying? So that, that aspect of his sister, and then you have that his sister's, she works for the highest company, the whole strong, independent woman, don't need no man narrative with his sister. And then she has a divorce, and you see she kept the kid. So, and then you have the Isom character acting as somewhat of a, substitute father to his niece. You know what I'm saying? Substitute father figure. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of aspects to this book where, Eric July, to me, it would have really helped if he had a editor, and to edit the book and tell him, yeah, man, some of these pointers, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for the message you're putting out with this book. You're putting out that, what I'm saying, he's going to be a normal hero. The script is going to be, less propaganda and agenda and all this stuff. But if you read the book, you know what I'm saying, you have Yara just beat up the Alpha Core, basically. She's a strong, single, independent white woman, just beats up the authority, like it's nothing. Beats up the authority, then this strong, independent white woman beats up Isom like he's nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like he's nothing. You know what I mean? Then you have her, Yara, just fighting the police. That's the whole woke narrative where you have the defund the police when you read that section, And then you have his sister, Isom's sister's a single mother, independent woman, don't need no man situation. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of the left narrative in this book. I've seen this happen before with some writers where, they're so against the left narrative, but while writing their own content, it crawls up in there, So to me, man, even the way the book ends, the book ends, like I said, the book even ends with a continuation of the middle. It's just with Fantano, whatever, just womp, 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 just talking for no reason. And then the Alpha Core is just tossed aside like it's nothing. The Yara characters, So to me, with the script of this book, man, the script is just everywhere, bro. It doesn't make any sense. The priority, the main plot, the subplot. I mean, the main plot of this book is a false accusation. The main plot is that this woman is assumed to have been harmed by this man when there's no evidence. Even there's a section of the book where him and his sister are looking at this chick fabricating reasons that she's harmed. Oh, look, she doesn't look confident, or blah, blah, blah. You know, there's a lot of issues with it. It looks, to me, you know, it's sad to say this book appears as though it was written from a perspective of, you know, the Me Too situation. You know, it was written from a perspective of believe all women. You know, believe all women, because the character that Avery or Isom comes to save, there's really no sign that she's in danger or she's been harmed at all. He's just coming out of, yo, man, his sister calls him and says, you know, she might be in danger. She's been hanging out with one of your friends who's a bad guy, who's a bad man. And you know, he might have harmed her. When in reality, it's her choice. She's an adult. She decides to date a troubled man, so be it. But when you read it, it just comes off, man, as a very pro believe all women, a very pro Me Too, you know, accusations without justifications or evidence. When you read it, basically it's like Isom was sent to solve a Me Too accusation, a false accusation. And then he beats up this man, fights him, no evidence at all if Fantano's a bad guy or harmed her, and then comes to, and the thing is, you know, while you're reading this book, Isom doesn't come as a, you know, noble hero or something. It just comes across as he wants a reason to fight that Fantano guy, and the reason is, yo, this chick is missing, so I'm gonna go trash Fantano's business, and without any evidence, I'm just gonna go trash this man's business. And to me, you know, with Eric July pushing, he's a libertarian and believes in capitalism. But if you read this book, the way Isom's written is he comes to destroy the business of a man that has not been proven guilty of anything. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of issues with the script. And to me, from what it looks like, you know, the only thing this book doesn't have, you know, with the woke narrative is that you don't have the promotion. To me, it was written as a very heterosexual book. You know, I respect that. He wrote it as if you're a hetero, you know, if you're looking for a book where there's, you know, sexuality isn't clickbait. Because, you know, a lot of books from Marvel, DC, a lot of mainstream books right now are basically, they use heterosexuality as bait. So you go in to read the book, then out of nowhere, it turns out it's a homosexual book. When you're heterosexual, and, you know, part of being heterosexual isn't, you know, participating in reading a homosexual book. So to me, man, this book, there's a lot of issues. I think Eric July really needs an editor and a co-writer to check, because what bled into this book is a lot of his issues with the left, you know, were put into this book. You know, Yara is just seen as an abusive woman that's just ready to attack any man without question. You know what I'm saying? Then his sister, you know, Isom's sister is a strong, independent, single mother who justifies that a divorce is not harming her daughter at all. You know what I'm saying? Basically, she's raising a future single mother. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of Eric's issues with the left, you know, corrupted this book. You know what I'm saying? The only saving grace for the book, you know, the art was good. The art was very good, man. No problem with the art at all. You know what I'm saying? No problem with the art. even though the character design of Isom, you know, it didn't match the lifestyle he's living. You know what I'm saying? You know, he's living in the ranch life, you know, basically he's living in the rancher's life, but his clothing doesn't say he's a rancher. You know, no boots, no cowboy boots, nothing. His clothing doesn't match the lifestyle he's living. And then he just wears a generic hoodie throughout the majority of the book. You don't see his personality. If he's so proud to be a rancher now, he would live it. Then the introduction to the Yara character, why she's not wearing her costume when she's looking for a fight with the Alpha Corps, and she's just wearing what appears to be a gym suit. And when you're trying to brand the character, it doesn't make sense that she's introduced without her costume. Yet the advertisement for this Yara character was her in her costume. When you read the book, you don't see her wearing a costume at all. You know what I'm saying? Neither do you see Avery until the end, Isom wearing his costume. Let me see. Give me a minute. Yeah, so, you know, the script really needs work, man. In all honesty, in fact, I'm going to give you an example of what the script should have been. The script should have been, I'm going to give it to you. The script should have been, boom, Avery is called by his sister, you know, who's been he's called by his sister who thinks one of her friends is in trouble. You know what I'm saying? One of her girlfriends is in trouble. And it turns out this girl was either Avery's ex, his ex-girlfriend, you know what I'm saying? And turns out she's in trouble and she's involved with the Fantano character. So you could have somewhat of a love triangle. You know what I'm saying? So Isom is invested because that's his ex-girlfriend. And she's involved with somebody that was his rival in high school. So he has a reason to check up on her. You know what I'm saying? And there's a reason why he's overreacting and just so aggressive and antagonistic towards the Fantano character. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, and then maybe you have it that she gets hurt. She ends up in a hospital. And he thinks it's Fantano. But, you know, Fantano owns a bar. You know, he operates some shady aspect to his business. And maybe he confronts Fantano. They get into an argument and maybe Fantano pushes him. Then he has to fight his guards. But turns out, you know, later on in the story, as you progress, you know, he gets in a fight with Fantano, who has his own accept, who beats up Avery, you know what I'm saying, and beats him up, tosses him, and he bumps into Yara, who's fighting the Alpha Corp, you know what I'm saying. They want her for some reason. So now you have a reason for Yara to be there, that the Alpha Corps is invested in her, you know what I'm saying, invested in her. And then, you know, Avery, you know, Isom helps out Yara fight the Alpha Corps, helps her fight the Alpha Corps. Maybe he's wearing some type of, you know what I'm saying, to cover his identity, some type of face mask or something. He's, you know, then while fighting the Alpha Corps, you know, Yara creates a distraction with her powers and they escape, and you have Yara fly him around. And, you know, she flies him around and says, you know what, I owe you. What's your name? And he tells her somewhat of his name. And he says, you know, I really do need your help. And what he has Yara do is he has Yara pretend to be looking for a job so she could sneak into Fantano's club in his bar as a worker. She sneaks in there to get information, and something happens. Something goes wrong. Maybe the Alpha Corps is at this club, Fantano's club, you know, during their off time. They're there enjoying themselves, and maybe she gets caught. She gets caught sneaking around looking at his camera footage, and she gets caught. Then out of nowhere, the Alpha Core, you know what I'm saying, fights her. And then you have Avery, you know, pop up. You know, Avery pop up his suitcase. You know, he has his suitcase with his costume, you know what I'm saying, in a hotel or in his ranch. Maybe what happened is he had Yara fly him to his ranch. They sit down, they talk, and then he digs up the suitcase with his costume, and then Yara agrees to help him. So now you're building both characters. You're building up Yara and Isom, because, you know, that's what really blew up with this book is the Isom and Yara, and she agrees to help him. She sneaks into the bar looking for a job, like I said. Turns out the Alpha Core is there on their off time. You know what I'm saying? They're enjoying themselves in VIP, whatever. And then you have that band performing, that band that appears to have, you know, Eric July's, you know, version of Thor. And you could see that character's inspired by Valhallan from the Justice Friends. You know what I'm saying? The Justice Friends from, you know, Dexter's Laboratory, where they had a version of Thor that played guitar. Valhallan, you know, the god of rock, whatever. So, you know what I mean? You have them performing at the bar where Yara is caught. She's flying around fighting. Maybe she bumps into the Viking character while they're performing, and they try to help her. You know what I'm saying? They try to help her because he's smitten. You know, he likes Yara. So now you introduce all these characters in one setting, and a major brawl happens. And, you know, the Alpha Core happens to be there. So now you're setting up that the Alpha Core might be in the pocket of Fantano. You know, they might be in his pocket where they're corrupt. You know, they're paying him money. So now the reader, while they're reading it, they see all these plot lines in one section. You know what I'm saying? Because they see that, man, the Alpha Core is probably with this Fantano character. And then later on, after the brawl, after the fight, whatever, you have the Viking character, you know, Isom and all of them team up to fight all these people at the bar, and something happens where they disappear. You know, they escape. And you have Fantano, you know, looking at the Alpha Core like they failed him. You know what I'm saying? And he says, maybe I don't, you know, I pay you guys to watch my back, and this is what you do. You know what I'm saying? So now you end it with, damn, it's established that Fantano is a Lex Luthor level of a criminal. You know what I'm saying? He's Lex Luthor if Lex Luthor was a major club owner. You know what I'm saying? And then you end it with Avery coming back to his girl that's in the hospital. And, you know, maybe she comes out of a coma and tells him what happened. And, you know, then it turns out that Fantano shows up to come check up on her also. But, you know, Fantano he doesn't want to fight Isom in front of her. And then, you know, Fantano reveals that, yeah, man, it wasn't him that, you know, she didn't get hurt because of him, but maybe a rival to his, you know, establishment. So now you're setting it up that there was espionage or a setup to set up Fantano. So now you have Isom regretting everything he's done. And then it ends with him going back to the ranch, and you have Yara talking to him, telling him, you know, it wasn't his fault. You know, he might have overreacted. And maybe you have a situation where Yara grabs hold of him, hugs him or something. So you kind of set up, maybe there's a relationship there. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you have Yara who meets him at the ranch, kisses up on him, and maybe they wake up in the same bed. You know what I'm saying? And now you set up another love triangle, because Now you set it up where can Avery get over his ex? You know, is Yara into Isom? And then you bring up the Viking character who's into, Yara. So you have a dual love triangle. You know what I'm saying? And then you end Isom 1 with the Alpha Core probably taking orders from a bigger bad guy. You know what I'm saying? Telling him that, you know what, everything's going as planned. You know what I'm saying? Going as planned. And maybe he's looking at a photo of Isom and he's, touching his face like he's injured and says, we've got him back in the city. He's all that stands against the Alpha Core being the sole saviors of this city. You know what I'm saying? That would have been a better setup. To me, man, Eric July, the next book, he's really gonna need a editor. You know what I'm saying? This is his first book. He went in guns blazing, but he needs an editor, man, because if the next Isom issue is anything like this first issue, this first issue, it's not gonna work out well. This might be a situation where, Eric July paved the way, the Rippaverse paved the way to inspire many other creators. What you think, Fat Boy? Oh, man, good. Well, what you think? Got my cat, whatever. So Eric July to me is really gonna need a future editor. He's really gonna need an editor to test the script, because the first issue, the story is all over the place and it makes no sense. You know what I'm saying? There's really no sense. It's very forced. It's very forced. It's as though a hero's trying to solve a false allegation on a man. There's no reason for Isom to be fighting and going this hard, and he's not using his head. So, the other problem you have, so, let me give my final verdict. So I'll say this, the art was well done, and, I appreciate that the book was made, and the book will pave the way for many other indie-only indie non-industry creators. It raised over $3 million. It's really the beginning of a whole new era, and a lot of content creators embraced it. One of the major issues with the industry when it comes to DC, Marvel, and all of them is they don't embrace the content creators. Marvel doesn't. The major companies don't embrace the content creators. The content creators will get strikes for wearing shirts or wearing any memorabilia to the characters. But this indie rise up triggered by Eric July is really gonna change that, because he even encourages you to review the book, let them know your thoughts on the book so they can make it better. You know what I'm saying? So to me, he's triggered that we want to increase engagement. We want you content creators to let us know your thoughts on the book and, express your experience. So, that's a big movement. You don't have that by the major companies, your DC, your Marvels, your Dark Horses. You know what I mean? What's your thoughts, Fat Boy? Huh? You don't have any thoughts? No? No thoughts. All right. So, he's doing that. So it's going to trigger a lot of new creators, but I look at this book somewhat like a Superman 1. Superman 1 was a very basic book, very basic premise, very basic story. It wasn't the best story ever. You know what I'm saying? It was very basic. With this book, it's basic, but its structure is everywhere else. So to me, with Eric July, he's really gonna need a editor for this book. Really gonna need an editor, a future editor to help him edit this book and have it perform a lot better. He's really gonna need an editor to help out with this book, And the final verdict is, and another thing is this. Now, I saw his next book. It can't be $35. It can't be $35. I'd say at the most, if he's gonna do a digital download, most likely he should sell the digital only edition, probably $10. The physical print, probably $15 to $20. This book should not be over $35. One of the big issues you have with a lot of guys making these indie books is, you could look up Comic Books Matter with your boy Zach. You could even look up Ethan Van Sciver's Cyberfrog. A lot of these guys will claim they're trying to solve the industry, trying to help the industry, but their books are overpriced to where you can't get it in the hands of everybody. You can't get it in the hands of a lot of the teenagers, the youngsters, the younger crowd, which are the future fans of the series. Because if you look at the comic books, when it originated where children could afford to buy and read a new comic. You know what I'm saying? And the problem with a lot of the indie guys is they will complain about the majors, or you overprice your book, and then they will sell their books at $50. $50 for one book, $40 at insane prices. I understand, this is Eric July's first book. Maybe there's a lot of things he didn't calculate on the printing and delivering. So, it was priced at $35. I know some people say, because he's already mentioned, $35 a year ain't that bad. Yeah, it ain't that bad for an adult, somebody in their, 20s to 30s and above. But these aren't the people you're going to want to read your books and continue it and ensure that it has a future. To me, man, his next book, he's gonna need to ensure that the pricing comes down. I would say the digital could be between, I'd say around probably at the most $10. He needs to also have a digital. I know a lot of these guys will say, well, I'm worried about digital and, digital and people pirating it and all that. But people can easily scan the physical book to download it, and then we're in the digital age. If you want to change the industry, you can't ignore the presence of digital books. So to me, for his next Isom book, he needs to have a digital tier. It needs to. Digital, I'd say, price it if you $10 for digital. Then for the physical print, I'd say about 15 to potentially 20. If he's gonna, and I saw the quality of the book. I personally think he ordered this through Greco Printing, some print on demand, that fulfills your orders. Because I got the box, man. I'll show you again. I got the box, and I've seen this box before. I've seen this box with some books produced by Pocket Jacks Comics, Greco Printing. I'm pretty sure they had to have used a fulfillment center. So I don't think the book was as priced as he thinks. And also another problem with the book is you can't have advertisement appear in the middle of the story. It really breaks up the immersion in the story. And after paying $35, that really harms it. That should have been either to be, later on. That should have been like the last page or something, you know what I'm saying? Now, so the next book, and the other thing with this book, with Eric July, I've said this before, he needs to go on a tour. You need to go on a tour for Isom 1, and you have to bring the price down. This book, in my honest opinion, the physical price should be brought down to about $15 to $20. You know what I'm saying? 15 to 20. I mean, I would sell it personally at potentially 10 to about 10 to 20 physically. So that way children, and you could really spread out the sales of the book. And to me, needs to go on tour. He needs to tour comic book stores because, you know, this book was well received globally. You know, a lot of people wanted this book. And like I said, story-wise, the story falls apart. The story really falls apart, but the art was great. It was delivered on time. And, you know what I'm saying? And it paves the way for a lot of future indies to come. I mean, a lot of times the first book that does this isn't the best. You know what I'm saying? Isn't the best. And after reading the book, there's a lot of work that needs to be done for the next book, you know. But I would say for this first book, Eric July needs to have a nationwide tour bookstores, you know what I'm saying? Then go overseas and tour them. I would even say Eric July needs to team up with some publishers overseas so they can publish the book. You know, France has a strong comic book publishing. Japan, he needs to team up with some overseas companies that he would allow to publish, to distribute the book overseas. You know what I'm saying? To really strengthen this book, because the book, like I said, man, it's decent. It's a decent read, great. You know, the art is high caliber, great art. You know what I'm saying? I don't got a problem with the art at all. The story's decent. You know what I mean? Decent, but it's very not well structured. You know, so give me a minute. Not well structured. So to me, he needs to tour with this book. He needs to tour, show the world, because a lot of content creators supported this book, you know, from England to all over the world. A lot of content creators supported this book, and I would say for the brand, if the goal is to actually have this series succeed and promote it, he needs to go overseas, man. He needs to travel, have a nationwide tour, bookstores, then go overseas, Australia, America, and I would even say pay some people to translate the book. This book needs to be put on Amazon.com. Needs to be put on Amazon, and he needs to translate it in Spanish, English, French, Japanese. If it's truly about saving the industry and promoting quality and promoting such, he needs to translate this book into multiple languages and iron out some deals with some distributors outside of the country. You know what I'm saying? Now, give me 1 minute. Now, I'm going to touch up on the future of the series. What I think he really has to do, the future. Give me 1 second. So, now, like I was saying, now the good, I said, with this book, I'll say this, man, it's very important. It establishes a very important precedence for, indie creators, indie content creators that are going to make books, that will be writing and creating books without any industrial experience, no any industry experience. And, the book was delivered on time, and, I got my book. I'm happy. I'm proud. I supported it. I'm very proud I supported it, and I'm going to hold on to this book. I think this book is the beginning of a new era, because the way I look at it, the Isom book is an era where there was before the Rippaverse and now there's after. Before the Rippaverse, it was industry first. If you're an indie creator, you can't compete with the industry creators, the establishment. You can't compete on their level. Then this book comes out and it outsells the mainstream corporate corporate books. It completely annihilates the corporate books. And the best thing is Eric July had no experience in the comic book industry. You know, he's not a former DC writer, former Marvel artist. He has nothing to do with the industry, you know. And, you know, that's great. It paves the way for, you know, the future that's coming. You know what I mean? But, you know, in all honesty, for the future of the Rippaverse, I think he's really gonna need an editor. He's gonna need an editor, because what's gonna happen is a lot of people, such as myself, a lot of people are reviewing and reading a book. A lot of them are reviewing and reading a book. And, you know, a lot of people are going to rise up. You know, that's the beauty of competition and capitalism. You know, a lot of new creators will rise up. And I look at Isom in the Rippaverse as Superman. You know, Superman came out, but other people would eventually surpass Superman. You would have Shazam. You originally, Captain Marvel surpassed Superman, and then you would have Batman and so on. So eventually it'll be surpassed. Now, for the future of the Rippaverse, for him to ensure that this will be successful, you know what I'm saying, in my honest opinion, that this will actually be a successful universe and have a lot of great brand expansion, he's gonna need to release, in my honest opinion, he's gonna need to release 2 books. He's gonna need to get a writer to help him, of course, with Isom too. And I think with Yaira, he's gonna need to make a book for the Yaira character. You know what I'm saying? Because you're gonna need Isom and Yaira. You're gonna need a book for Yaira by herself. The fan base is big enough, and I think with her own series, you can actually course correct the issues that happened in her presentation in the first Isom book. As I look at Yaira as a combination of, I'd say, Starfire and Wonder Woman. You know, a lot of people are interested in it. And I look at it as, if you're really branching out this universe, you're gonna need to, you know what I'm saying, look at Isom like he's Superman. If Isom is Superman, then your answer to Wonder Woman would be Yaira. So I look at it as he's gonna need to really work on 2 books. Yaira has to get her own book, and Isom, you know what I'm saying? And then, you know, with the Alpha Core eventually. But to me, he's gonna need to capitalize on the interest of Yaira and Isom. And I would say even before Eric July releases the next book, I think what he needs to do is have an art contest. Have an art contest to feature the art of artists that are interpreting Isom, the Alpha Core, Yaira. And, you know, if he has some new characters, he could present them and have artists compete so their art could be featured on the first printing of an art book based around the Rippaverse. You know what I'm saying? Because I've seen a lot of artists draw and illustrate his characters already, Isom and Yaira. So you might as give them a way to shine and create based on your characters, you know, to further expand it. You know what I mean? So to me, man, with the next book, he really needs to create I'd say you need a book for Yaira. She needs her own book series to further the brand. You know, whether he's gonna write it or co-write it. And like I said, he's gonna need an editor. You know, Eric July really needs a strong quality writing editor, because with Isom 1, a lot of the issues with the left he has leaked onto the story with Yaira behaving like Captain Marvel. You know what I'm saying? Just violence first, then with the sister of Isom's sister, being a, independent, don't need no man situation. You know what I'm saying? And then Isom, having an issue with another man strictly based off accusations without evidence. You know what I mean? He's got to announce that he hired a new writing editor. In fact, I know somebody I would recommend. Because he's helped me out with some writing. I would recommend he contact, Preston Poulter of Pocket Jacks Comics. He's really good at helping with editing and direction. You know what I'm saying? Because to me, Eric July is going to really need an editor. Really needs an editor. Or the next issue, man, it's going to start spiraling out of control. Because, Zach had a book. Give me a minute. Zach had a book. I don't remember the name for some reason. But Zach had a book, and the art quality was amazing, but the writing was, unfocused. You really needed an editor. You know what I'm saying? And art was great quality, but, he didn't deliver on time and all that. Eric July doesn't have an issue with delivering on time and the guarantees and all that, but you're gonna need quality editors, writing editors, because the Isom issue 1 really suffers from a lack of editors. It really messes up the flow and the direction of the book, and a lot of issues leak through. Like I said, a lot of leftist things bled through the issue, so to me, he's gonna need an editor. And another thing he's gonna need to do with the whole Rippaverse thing is he's gonna need to, I would say, host a contest where he's gonna allow some writers with new series to come in, with new series, you know what I'm saying? Maybe potentially have a contest for maybe 1 book or 2 books that you'll put in. And the other thing he's going to have to do with the Rippaverse is, I personally don't think that every series you're writing should be a part of the same universe. That's going to do a lot of damage when it comes to, if you're trying to expand on the quality of books without the agenda and propaganda, you're going to have to allow other creators. So, for example, let's say a creator participates in this contest and they're writing a horror graphic novel. They have a horror graphic novel, or they have a book based on the military. You can't have it that it took place in the same universe as the Rippaverse. That's going to limit it. You know what I'm saying? That's going to limit the reach of the quality, because you're subjecting everybody to what has to be in the Rippaverse. And that's going to limit the quality of books. And then it's going to limit the amount of people you can actually feature. You know what I'm saying? Because if everyone has to be in the same universe, you're basically going to limit the amount of people that can write books for you. I would say he needs to look at other creators he wants to bring on where it has nothing to do with the Rippaverse. The people that are following Eric July will want to read the Rippaverse because it's associated with him. And, of course, you could sign some people to have their series involved. But when it comes to expanding and creating a company where you have far more new creators that have quality and, push past the propaganda and agenda, you're going to need to expand beyond your universal limits. And we've seen this happen. We've seen this happen with a company like Dark Horse Comics, Image Comics, where they publish other books that have nothing to do with their own, their own franchises. Even DC, when they had Vertigo, you have other imprints. I'll look at it as Rippaverse is the Eric July imprint and probably the main publisher. And then you have some other imprints under it. You know what I mean? So people won't really be confused because they'll know, well, if it's Isom, Yaira, you know, that's part of the Rippaverse. And then these other brands are publications associated with the Rippaverse, you know, their imprints. So to me, man, you know, he started out, all I know is he delivered the book. And, you know, I'm proud to have it. I'm proud to have supported it, put some money in it, because I look at this book at, you know, generated over $3.5 million as a stamp of what's next, you know, as a stamp of what's next. You know, with the story, you know, everything that, when somebody breaks the mold, it doesn't mean they'll be of the highest quality. You know what I'm saying? So story-wise, I mean, it has a lot of potential. You know, the Isom franchise has a lot of potential. It's just that, Eric July, you really need a solid editor. You really need an editor, man. Because the way this was written, if it continues with this route, it's going to suffer the same fate as, you know, your boy Zach with his books, where the script is just, the stories are, you know, they're all over the place or they're nowhere to be found. And that's what's going to really hurt the momentum of the Rippaverse. You know, he's going to need a strong editorial. He's going to need to hire a strong editorial. You know, if I had to make my recommendations would be, you know, Preston Palter of Pocket Jacks Comics. He's an excellent, you know, guy that could do editorial. He has experience in the, you know, expansion, you know, filming, all that stuff. So, and he, you know, even helped me out with my writing and editorial. You know what I'm saying? So to me, he's gonna really need a strong editor, because the sequel to Isom, you know, from what I've read of how it all ends, the sequel is just a continuation of the middle. I mean, if you read this book, nothing got solved. Nothing at all. You know what I'm saying? There was just a middle, a beginning, a very minor beginning, and an endless middle. And we all know what destroys a company or a franchise is usually the sequel. You know what I'm saying? So it starts out fresh. Everybody, oh my God. You know, Isom 1, I love it. You know, it's fresh, it's new. But if they do not get the sequel, you know, the sequel's not up, you know, an up success and higher quality in writing. Because to me, what's gonna keep the book, the writing. You know, the writing, to me, writing is key. Of course, the artwork, amazing, you're gonna continue that feat, but you need the writing to be strong. You know what I'm saying? So to me, with the sequel, he's really, in all honesty, he's really gonna need, you need to rebuild, you need to build a strong editor, you know, editor-in-chief. You really need an editor-in-chief, someone that can really help edit these series, you know. And to me, you're gonna need a book, and you know, it needs to be, you need a new Yaira. When you release the next book, I'd say Yaira, you could probably do a small graphic novel, probably around 64 pages for Yaira. Then do another 90-page book for Isom. You know what I'm saying? Because to me, the fan base for Yaira, you know, it's very strong, the interest, and you can't ignore that. You got to go with the momentum, because unlike Marvel and DC, the industrial comic book creators, where they have, you know, films and all these other franchises, video games to fall back on, when you're an independent, you really have to capitalize on the momentum. You know, I would even say with the Yaira character, man, I would have artists do a competition for you know, an illustration book of just Yaira, for a calendar or something. You know, because another problem that you could fall into is that you don't have anything going on until the sequel, and it could fade. The interest could fade. So to me, Eric July, you need to host some art contests, to keep the momentum going. You know what I'm saying? Let people know that, yeah, man, it's still going. Keep the momentum going. So, and you're really gonna need a editor, man, an editorial, because the major weakness of Isom is the writing. The writing. I could clearly see, as someone who's written a lot of books, I think I have over 7 comic books under my belt, written by myself, whatever. And I know a lot of other guys that have written some books, is that, man, a lot of Isom felt like, a lot of Isom, the way it read, was a lot of ideas. A lot of ideas were there, but the execution was not well done. Story-wise, it's all over the place. It has no structure. You know what I mean? It's just the beginning, and then how he handles things. Like I said, I don't want to ramble. But, so to me, man, I want to congratulate you, Eric July, for paving the way. Ever since I saw the announcement of this book, I've been supporting on, as much as I can on the channel, your channel, keeping an eye out. But I would say for this series, because I look at Isom as it breaks the mold. The Rippaverse is the new era of, non-industrial comic book creators. This completely changes the game. But I would say, man, for your next book, you need an editorial. Yaira's gonna need her own book. She's gonna need, I'd say, a graphic novel with an origin story. Probably, I'd say 64 pages will work. And then Isom, you need a new book. And maybe this time, I would even say with the new Isom book coming out, I would say go for 64. So that way you could have a 64-page book for Isom and a 64-page book for Yaira. Together that's about 128 pages, for the next book. And I would say you have to support digital. You got to support digital because, in all honesty, this book could have made a lot more money and could have reached a lot more people, because some people are overseas where you can't deliver to them. You know what I'm saying? It's really problematic to deliver to them, and digital allows the whole world to participate. They just download it, they could read it, the whole world, and some people will gladly translate the book for you in another language. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing is, like I said, for the future of this book, you have to put it on Amazon. This has to be on Amazon for physical and digital. And it has to be on Amazon ASAP. That way people can order it and get their hands on it as soon as possible. The problem, because Amazon is it's not competition, it's just such a large marketplace. And no one here as an indie is going to compete with that. So you might as just put it on there. And with Amazon, you can have them read it with their Prime membership for free digitally, and you'll get paid a certain amount. And they can physically print and order it from Amazon, print on demand. And the next Isom, like I said, you got to drop the price, because you want this book to be affordable. If it's going to be a hobby, you're going to want it to be affordable for the teenagers. I'd say teens to preteens. It's got to be affordable. I would even say with Isom, I would actually, if you want to drop the price a little, I'd recommend making a black and white edition. A black and white edition where you lower the price because there's no color. So I would even say make a black and white edition to further drop the price. That way you have it's affordable for everybody. You know what I mean? So to me, man, Eric July, man, respect to you, bro. Respect to you for making this book and paving the way. But, to be an honest review, man, you're really gonna need an editor. You're gonna need an editor. And to me, you really gotta reshape, because now your company's got $3.5 million. I think profit-wise, you profited about $3 million, probably 200,000. So now you got to think about growing and hiring the right editorial staff. And I would even say, you know, you got to start planning on publishing some other books, reaching out to distributors to distribute Isom. And to me, you got to drop the price, man. Isom, to me, you know, should not be $35. If you want this to really spread with the youth and the younger people that will keep the brand alive, you know, in all honesty, the price has to drop to potentially, I'd say $9.99 to about $20 for the physical. Gotta drop the price. That way the kids can afford it and they could buy it. Because at the end of the day, people are looking at a book and referencing it to like a movie, you know, and so on. So there's a lot of references to go with that. And to me, if you want to spread this throughout the neighborhoods, because I personally think you got to start a tour. You need an Isom tour, bookstores, schools. You need to do a nationwide tour, then a global tour for this book to inspire a lot more people. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, like I said, this is huge. This is a huge thing. And in all honesty, this Isom book is going to pave the way for a lot more creators. I expect 2023 to be a major year, because Isom has basically changed the whole era. You know what I mean? You even beat Keanu Reeves, I bought Keanu Reeves' book. It was lazy, man. The art was lazy. You know, people bought it because it's going to be Keanu. And then you open a book and the artwork doesn't look super realistic. So you could see it's Keanu Reeves. You beat that book. You beat Power Rangers. You know, groundbreaking. So the next step is now you've got all the money from the book, the quality. Because to me, what can hurt this Isom book is if the writing quality is of the first issue. Yeah, man, it's going to spiral downwards, man. It's going to spiral downwards. But other than that, man, peace and prosperity and, you know, to continued success. And I'm proud I supported this book. And, you know, after reading it, I learned a lot, you know, looking at it. You know, you know, I got some things I plan to do. But congrats and respect.